Hello everybody and welcome to Pokemon of the Week with me, Daniel, Onion Gamer 64 or Civil Onion based upon how you know me. This week's Pokemon is a Pokemon that I'm notoriously bad at pronouncing. Cofagrigus, all of these are ways that people do say this Pokemon's name. You don't say the word fag in it, that's the hint. Anyway, our mummy Pokemon is number 563 in the Pokedex and is indeed this week's Pokemon of the Week. Generally speaking, it loiters in the underused tier and is a pure ghost type. Consequently, it only has two resistances and they are to bug and to poison. However, on the flip side, it's only weak to dark and ghost. Obviously being a pure ghost type, it doesn't have any quadruple weaknesses, and as a Pokemon that relies on its defense, as you may be able to tell from the base stats, that is a very key factor. Now, if we look at its base stats here, its defenses are enormous, especially its physical defense. You might actually look at this stat distribution and think it's just a special version of Dusknoir. That is not in fact the case. I will explain throughout the sets why you should not treat this Pokemon like Dusknoir with an Egyptian theme to it. But just like Dusknoir, its incredible defences are let down by its base 58 HP. Obviously, Cofagrigus won't be winning any awards for its physical attacking power either, and it is, just like the ghost type I keep mentioning, incredibly slow. It appears you either have to be very, very quick or very, very slow if you're a ghost type for some bizarre reason. Anyway, let's get on to what the ability is. Normally, a Pokemon has 3 abilities, unless it's got Levitate. Got an exception to the rule here. Mummy changes the ability of a Pokemon that hits you with a contact move to Mummy. Basically, it's the equivalent of a snare trap, in that if you get punched in the face, you get rid of the opponent's ability. Obviously, if Slacking was to punch you and get rid of its ability, not as big an issue for it. Anyway, let's get to the first of 3 sets for this week, and this is what I declare the safe set. This is the set that you will see on simulators as a default setting. You'll probably see it on the Smogon website. I did have to look on the Smogon website for one thing, and I will tell you that when we get there, because it's a very obscure thing. But anyway, the first set is the safest one, which is why I put it as the first set. You've got an incredible base defense, so utilising that, with Will-O-Wisp in the long suit, your defense is astronomical despite your rather poor HP. You can make use of your rather poor HP though, even with maximum HP investment, by using Pain Split. Unfortunately, you don't have a more reliable HP recovery move than that, so you're going to have to rely upon it if you want it to last a long time. On the positive side though, you will survive a whole host of attacks, especially on the physical side, like I said. The exception obviously to that is you don't want to burn a Pokemon, for example, like Heracross. Might be physical, but obviously Guts as an ability gets around Will-O-Wisp, so do be careful when you want to use that. When it comes to your attacking move, you have to go with Shadow Ball. It's your only really viable option. You're only Ghost type, so obviously only Ghost gets the same type attack bonus. Your special attack uninvested is Pants, so you have to go with a stab move. And even though Hex might be a potentially good example of a move to put in there, unless you happen to be running a team with Toxic Spikes, in which case why on earth would you run Will-O-Wisp or this Pokemon set for that matter? Shadow Ball as a result is almost always the better choice. Final move though is quite an interesting one. If you're using it in the correct manner, in that you know this Pokemon with this set will not sweep, you can have Haze, which can knock all the status changes that are on the field currently away. Can be very good for stopping a sweeper, so long as they don't have obviously +6 and either a move like Dark Pulse or Night Slash or Crunch respectively. Block is the better option if you're anticipating playing inexperienced players that don't tend to switch as much as they should do. That tends to be the biggest issue with new players. They don't switch very often unless they absolutely have to. But I would argue the most common option of the 3 is Knock Off. Knock Off knocks the opponent's item off unless they have an ability which prevents that, like Sticky Hold for example. Not many Pokemon that you'll be facing have that though, because it generally tends to be on rubbish Pokemon. Gastrodon can get it, but at the same time it never uses it because it has a better ability. But Knock Off will mean that it can normally knock leftovers off other walls, and that can consequently mean that you can last a bit longer than them. EV wise, maximise your HP and your defence for maximum bulk, combine that with a bold nature and leftovers to last as long as you can. Doesn't really matter where the other 4 go, but if you want to last a long time, I would recommend throwing them in your special defence. So let's get to the second set, and I would say that this is the set that you can do the most with immediately. There's not a lot of setup required compared to the third set, which I will show you, which is an odd thing to say when you take it out of context, because you have to do 2 things first. Before you can attack, you're going to want to set up Trick Room. Cofagrigus can't deal with its lack of speed in any other way than to use Trick Room, and it's one of the few non-psychic types that can get hold of Trick Room. There are a few. Burnett can use Trick Room, Porygon 2 can use Trick Room, for example, but mostly Trick Roomers are psychic type, and obviously in this case, it's an exception to the rule. With a base 30 speed, there is no way on earth that you could do anything with it. I'd say anything under base 55 you're pretty much struggling with and you can't do too much with. But using Trick Room, your slowness can make you quick for 5 turns. You then want to use Nasty Plot, or vice versa. Nasty Plot raises your special attack by 2 stages, and as I put in the asterisk, don't use Calm Mind. The third set I will show you is a much better way of utilising Calm Mind. Don't use it for this set. And then we go with the Ghost and Fighting type attacking combination. Obviously, Ghost gets stabbed, so you will use that. You won't use Dark Pulse as an alternative, because that's just a terrible thing to do, and it has no better type coverage than Ghost. Hidden Power Fighting requires very, very weird IVs in order to go with the Trick Room set, and this is where I just had to consult the Smogon website, because unsurprisingly I didn't know this IV distribution off the top of my head. I know, I should try harder. But in order to get the Hidden Power Fighting IVs with the minimal amount of speed, you want that distribution that I have put on the screen now. Not a lot will be out slowing you, put it that way. This is still a set that, despite the fact that you're going far more offensive than the previous one, you'll still want to put leftovers as your item. Mainly because, like I said, even though you're going for a special attacking power, Cofagrigus is still quite bulky and will still rely on its bulkiness to stay up. Also, if you're using this set, it's very, very unlikely that just this Pokemon will benefit from the lack of speed, and if that is indeed the case, sort your team out, it's not very well utilised. As a consequence, what might often happen is you use the Trick Room and then you switch out and put a more suitable Pokemon in. Just because your Pokemon here can set up doesn't mean it always should, and that's another error beginning players fall for, is that they feel that if they put a Pokemon in which seems suited at the time, that they must go through their regimented plan of first doing Trick Room, then doing Nasty Plot, and then attacking. And that's not the case. You can use Trick Room and then switch out. Remember, it's still in effect even once you've switched out. There is no light clay equivalent though for Trick Room, so it will only last 5 turns. That's the one downside. Quiet Nature lowers your speed even further while boosting your base 95 special attack, which is not enormous but is usually sufficient for the job of what you need to do. And obviously you've only got one ability, so there'll not be any arguments over which ability to pick this week. Finally though, I'm going to show you how to use the Calm Mind, and I am amazed that this isn't a common set, because I didn't think I had to come up with much imagination to think this set through as a coherent one. But you don't see it that often. You did at the start of the generation see it a bit, which is why I'm bringing it up now. But I think genuinely, even to this day, this is the most effective set that you can have. Even though Cofagrigus is very much a very handy indeed spin blocker, I think Calm Mind is the best way to go. And you may remember when I did my set on Spiritomb, on my sets rather on Spiritomb, that a very similar set was used for this. There are positives and negatives for using Spiritomb over Cofagrigus, or Cofagrigus, or whatever its name is. Still can't say it even though I know how to pronounce it. Just one of those things. The way to use this is to get a bold nature, boost your defense and your HP as much as possible, and then Calm Mind as many times as you can without dying. Then Pain Split to get most of your health back, and then either repeat process or attack with either Shadow Ball or Hidden Power Fighting, whichever one is more appropriate. This can be a very, very slow Pokemon setup. It can take sometimes 4 or 5 Calm Minds before you're sufficiently powerful. But this Pokemon is so bulky that you can last very much that long, so long as you've scouted the opponent's team first for anything that would completely annihilate you. The IVs for hidden power fighting are there for non-Trick Room set as well. Obviously that's a bit more standardised and logical appearing. But as you can see, it's very similar to the first set in terms of its distribution. However, the main difference here is that you can indeed sweep with this one rather than the defensive version. It isn't quite as safe an option because there's no guarantee when you're setting up your sweep that it will work by any stretch of the imagination. But indeed, this is the most fun set to use. There are a few Calm Mind equivalents, though. You could argue that Miss Megis is a better Pokemon for this set because it's quicker. However, the difference is with that is that Miss Megis can't take a hit to save its life, and therefore it usually has to use Substitute over Pain Split, or if it wants to use Substitute and Pain Split, its type coverage is terrible. So you can really utilise the bulk of this Pokemon to make a very, very strong sweeper. Would recommend it though mid to late game. Like I said, just to get sure the Pokemon that will completely counter you are completely out of the way. Hope you found this interesting. Do leave feedback and talk to you all next week.